I had that suspicion. I said, let's do a gene test. I suspect you are just have an issue with histamine. Okay. And so sure enough, she was doing a lot of meal prep. Another similar case, just like that, same thing is a lot of people that are eating right, but doing meal prep and histamine driven intolerances are often done with foods that just sit out for a long time or leftovers. Constantly meal prepping, dueling of foods. Same thing within the bodybuilding community. Well, once upon a time, we worked a lot of kind of professional bodybuilders and bikini competitors, and all that is meal prep. But that's a problem is because sometimes if you're not breaking that down, you're driving more inflammation. You're creating more of this LPS or lipopolysaccharide representation, which is an endotoxin, which then drives intestinal permeability. And now you have systemic inflammation.
Welcome to MyMD Unscripted, where healthcare gets personal and the script gets tossed. I'm Dr. Clint Carter, ER doctor turned direct primary care freedom fighter, on a mission to challenge how our healthcare system treats patients in America. In every episode, my expert guests and I dive into real conversations about what's broken and how we can fix it by making healthcare about people, not just managing disease. It's time to rethink what healthcare should be and how we can make it better together. Welcome to the podcast. Hey guys, thanks for joining us on the MyMD Unscripted podcast. We have an awesome guest for you today. We are talking to Dr. Daniel Chille. He is a chiropractor, a functional medicine doctor, a naturopath that also runs a gym in the Chicago-based area. But if you're not in Chicago, no worries. He also does nationwide telemedicine to help people, get deep into lifestyle medicine and actually help people not just feel better, but be better. It's fun talking to providers that are getting outside the system for all the right reasons to help people be who they were really meant to be. Dr. Daniel, tell us a little bit more about what you're doing and what's going on in your area.
Thank you for the introduction. I love how you introduced my name. It was kind of like a swanky edge, so I appreciate that.
Oh, yeah. Well, if anyone's swanky and edgy, it's you, bro. It's great.
I appreciate it. Yeah. So thank you for the introduction. What we're doing is kind of unique. Many people that find us, they express and see the difference right away. So we're intersecting functional medicine with functional fitness. And that's looking at kind of underlying drivers to optimize just general health and human performance. We treat kids all the way to our aging population. And in clinic, we have the advantage of providing fitness training, personalized training programs, obviously rehabilitation, recovery, getting people out of pain. Then we also provide that virtually as well. It's a little bit less hands-on, but needless to say, it's still the level and depth of practicing what I like to term as personalized precision medicine. And so we know that muscle is kind of the largest organ of longevity now. It's critical to aging healthy and functionally. And so we've been going deep for the last 10 years in making sure that we're preserving lean muscle, we're maintaining lean muscle, we're optimizing lean muscle. And not only for our aging population, but starting off with building healthy foundation with our children. And so it's important within my family dynamic. I'm a former professional athlete myself. So fitness has always been a component of my lifestyle. And I think it has been tremendously overlooked within medicine, right? It's so easy. Movement is medicine, and it's critical. We see that within the blue zones, and it's not necessarily you have to go to the gym every day, right? It's just moving, making sure that the body is constantly in flux. I always say that we were designed to run away from a tiger, rest, eat, repeat, constantly moving the lymph, getting healthy blood flow throughout the periphery, making sure that we're also getting in, obviously, the right nutrition, optimizing circadian rhythmicity. But needless to say, so what we do is kind of a unique blend of those two practices. And then within that, what I love to do, and kind of how many of our patients start with working with me directly, we'll do advanced blood chemistry. So what I term as a advanced longevity wellness panel. And then we will combine that with a genetic test to ascertain holes within your biology. And what's interesting is, just from a personal lens, my great-grandfather died in his sleep in Sicily, so I'm half Italian, and he passed at a ripe age of 104, just from natural causes, kind of died in his sleep. You take the same genetic lineage. My grandmother moved to Rome kind of to work and support the family, and so they passed, unfortunately, at 84. Same kind of genetic lineage.
Right.
See what epigenetics can do to drive our genes. So while genes are not deterministic, it's important to plug holes in our biology to extend both lifespan and health span, the quality of our years. Because I can say very quickly is we didn't win the genetic lottery, but I mean, if you look at my great grandfather, needless to say, there's a way to overcome any sort of kind of genetic predispositions. I see that firsthand. And especially in our patients who appreciate that when we go through their genetic tests, because we take a lot of time and effort to dissect that.
Tell me a little bit more about what genetic tests are you doing? Like, in my world, in the direct primary care world, that's a super sexy thing to be able to offer, but I don't know exactly how to use it, or what are you using? What is it? How does it help you?
Yeah, it is a bit inundating to start. And I mean, I went through several certification processes to become fluent with that. So I wouldn't say so straightforward, but I pride myself on being on the cutting edge of where medicine is going and with strategy. And I exported my DNA from 23andMe years and years ago. And then also using Prometheus. It's since evolved tremendously since then, especially because we're kind of uncovering different genes and interplay therein daily, almost, if you will. And so we use 3x4 right now to do that on a very high level. We'll look at all the kind of risk factors under the sun, from cardiovascular risk, oxidative methylation, inflammation, any sort of nutrient deficiencies, hormones, detoxification. So once you kind of uncover some of these genetic SNPs and your specific alleles, you can see very quickly where there are holes in your biology. And nature doesn't really make mistakes. So looking at PPAR, gamma out gene, it's interesting because what's termed as the thrifty gene. If you have this once upon a time, this would help you live longer because we died of scarcity. Food wasn't prevalent 24 hours a day. But yet now we're kind of turning on certain genetic pathways, which otherwise would have been more kind of from self-preservation, and it's working against us.
Yep.
So same thing with detoxification. I mean, you can be slow phase 2 detoxifiers. And so with our environment, just 2 billion pounds of chemicals coming in at us from every angle, air, water, food, soil, etc. It's on us to make sure that we're plugging specific holes to alleviate that toxic burden. So we go very deep within genes. 3x4 is a company. Another excellent one that does things at a high level is the DNA company, which we've collaborated with as well. But that's one of the ways that our patients start with us, because now it allows us to practice that precision-based approach. But looking at our genes, it's a fraction to our partners in crime are microbes, real DNA by a factor of 10 to 1, while human genes are about 20,000. I mean, we have over 2 million bacterial genes in the trillions number of microbes that reside within us. So that third pillar that we practice is microbial medicine, which has been my very big passion for the last 5-10 years. And it was birthed out a personal story of overcoming illness once upon a time and kind of being let down by just the conventional approach of treating symptoms. And so I just realized early on, much like the story that you shared with yourself, is that when we got to figure something out, I guess that's really the impetus to get the ball rolling, to move the needle. And so my passion really has been all things microbiome and GI. I mean, it's like, if you look at the pinky as an example, we can't really see it, but there's more microbes on our pinky that live in the UK. That's how many microbes we have, greater population than that will reside in the United Kingdom. So we are far more bacterial DNA than we are everything else. And that interplay also not with only bacteria, but it's interesting. In Peter Attia's book, he references his 4 horsemen. Mine are bacteria, fungus, parasite, and viral. And that's kind of how we've evolved over time. Our immune system was designed to overcome that burden. But now you layer in heavy metals and, worse yet, environmental toxins. So pesticides, plastics, fungicides, herbicides, insecticides, VOCs, phthalates, energy-disrupting hormones, right? The list continues. We're just at a huge burden, right? And it's now estimated that 250, close to almost 300 now chemicals in the birthing mom's placenta. We ingest about 1 credit card's worth a week of plastic every single day. And it's very difficult with these forever chemicals for the body to eliminate. So above all else, I fear for our children, right? They're just coming into a world where there's been an inflection point where it's estimated that we're going to be outliving them, unfortunately. So what we do is we try to catch things early. We play the prevention game instead of playing the reactive game. So personalized, proactive approach similar to kind of what you're doing, the level and depth of what you go into. We try to help as much as we can and really figure out the underlying drivers. And so within that, I created a program called my Road to Recovery. So people that come in with sick that we're treating, and then once they get better, which I think happens very, very quickly. I see often too many times practitioners will say, yeah, we need to get you in for, this is going to take a long time. And you certainly, things do take a long time. And looking at autoimmune, I know we discussed that. That's a diagnosis of 7 years. People have been really fighting an uphill battle for a long time before that's been diagnosed.
Right.
And so it takes time to heal, certainly. But within our road to my road to recovery, I want my patients better yesterday. To be aggressive in our approach. Once they maintain that new bill of health, they don't want to revert. And so then we have a road to longevity program, which is kind of that maintenance roadmap.
Yeah, I love that. And I'll sit with my patients in here and, we will have put out most of the fires and they'll be like, so what are we doing? I'm like, well, because we're just starting. Right. Like you want to feel this good or better 20 years from now and more for the, my 30-year-olds and 40-year-olds, he's like, let's go. What do we need to do to live well? Health span, baby. Let's go. It's great.
Yeah, I definitely support that. I created this Foundation 5 principle where it's you and one of my mentors. I always love to give shout outs to people that have developed my learning potential and growth, Dr. Rakowski, that's the one I suggested, who's out in Houston. So he has kind of a more in-depth version, but mine, I try to be things as simple as possible. So it's your eat right, sleep right, move right, talk right, poop right. You master 5, you're going to feel right. It's that simple, but we make it complicated. Input, we just don't have the right input. And so I always say that we're living backwards to our evolutionary biology. We're not living in congruent with our biology anymore. Unfortunately, we're staying up late. Sleep is compromised. I always ask my patients, what time are you setting your alarm? They go, 5 a.m., 6 a.m., 7 a.m. I go, no, what time are you setting your alarm to go to bed? Right? So it's a fundamentally paradigm shifting model where we have to, the premise of practicing lifestyle medicine starts with certain pillars, and sleep is probably the most overlooked, unfortunately, because it's free. I always say nothing good happens after sunset. Yeah. For our, maybe we differ there because when we're putting kids to bed, finally it's our time. But that's the problem, right? We prioritize everything else, and then sleep is the afterthought, right? Or then we talked about this kind of on our podcast, eating up or eating late at night. It was interesting. It was very elegant study in the circadian code book, where two group of mice, one that ate healthy at night versus unhealthy, but early in the afternoon, 100% of the mice who ate healthy at night all gained weight. Brains are so metabolically demanding and driven off of glucose. So at night, we're trying to feed our metabolically active, hungry brain carbs. So what are we doing? We're going for the snacking foods, right? We're not eating healthy. And with the advent of light, which is great, we become more kind of efficient, but to our detriment. Doesn't look like we're getting any healthier. So there's many things that we do, I think, are backwards, but our goal is to help reshape someone's foundation and then leverage the testing to be able to move the needle even faster.
And the sleep piece is fun and difficult because there's a lot of people like, well, I would lay down at 9 o'clock, but I won't fall asleep till midnight. And it's like, well, what have you been exercising and eating? And all the other pieces of the other 5 that all play in together. Not that insomnia can't exist when you're doing most things right, but, mostly this insomnia epidemic is largely lifestyle mediated. And, the percentage of Americans on Ambien is embarrassing, but, even then they're like, well, I got to sleep. So, for your insomniacs, they're like, I would go to sleep earlier, but, what's your next go-to? Like, is it so holistic that it's just so independent depending on the patient, or what do you say to those?
So healing occurs in stages, and how we look at it is first we have to optimize circulation and perfusion. So we got to get blood flowing, liquid and nitric oxide. Everyone that walks in the door, they get a nitric oxide strip. I want to see kind of how we're able to deliver nutrients to the periphery to help heal. Second is blood sugar dysregulation, which I find incredibly common. But now it's not only a product of just eating crap, which is completely refined and processed food, crap, unintended. It's a lot of just internal dysbiosis. That's the problem. Our modern lifestyle is so stressed out, so burnt out, that is driving this metabolic endotoxemia. It's creating perturbations in the digestive process where we have holes and get into this kind of dysbiosis terrain where it's driving intestinal permeability, or colloquially known as leaky gut. And that's now then just affecting everything. And worse yet, that's where I believe a lot of chronic disease, modern disease stem from. And unfortunately, it's just I see that more and more with kids. That's the sad reality. But looking at blood sugar dysregulation is tremendously detrimental to the endothelial lining. So looking at cardiovascular risk, which kind of kills 1 and 2 these days, unfortunately. So you get those 2 layers right, you're already moving the needle and helping with sleep and optimizing circadian rhythm biology. But 3 and 4 to me is gut and immune, which naturally go hand in hand. It's estimated now that even up to 90% of our immune function resides in the gut. So we're not even touching hormones, because that to me is layer 5. You optimize 1 through 4 and you're already cleaning up hormones, right? But we do EHRT and such to get people feeling and looking their best. But sleep remains that foundational pillar, where so many people go into the component of stress. It's the elephant in the room. I didn't realize until I had kids. I didn't know what stress meant. Building a practice, I was like, yeah, man, this is difficult, but darn, with kids, it's a whole nother layer, right? And so it provides another layer of purpose too, which is incredibly rewarding.
Yep.
But the stress component is super real. So we're all walking around with HbA axis dysregulation and cortisol resistance. And that drives then insulin resistance, going back to the blood sugar piece. And hormones so if you're cortisol resistant, all your hormones are going to be off. Okay. But if you look at kind of those previous layers, you begin to optimize the foundation, you can quickly move the needle with helping people heal. That's the component of input equals output. So one of my clinical pearls that I learned early on was therapeutic dosing of melatonin and L-theanine to help optimize sleep, to restore circadian function, to make sure that every cell in your body, which melatonin is found, essential to life, plants included, we are going to be doing therapeutic dosing of melatonin and L-theanine to help buffer against the stress that's driven both internally and externally. So melatonin calms the body, L-theanine calms the mind. That 1-2 punch really helps people with insomnia or sleep issues, even some of these behavioral issues as well, because once you get every organ tissue syncing in the right harmony, it's like a beautiful symphony. Until then, it's broken. And then we're looking for exogenous molecules to help resynchronize. That's a crutch, and that's not sustainable long-term either. So we got to figure out what's driving that long-term. And interestingly, more so is that healthy sleep starts with healthy cortisol rhythm throughout the day, which starts with blue light exposure first thing in the morning, which we were designed to do when sun's rays are less ionizing, less damaging. So we get our people brushing their teeth barefoot out in the sun on Mother Earth, and already people start feeling better. It's crazy, right? And it's completely free. I like using what nature and God kind of provided for us to heal, instead of a lot of these, modern tech things that are quite pricey, which have its place. But needless to say, there's easy different ways that we can start with our patients and within ourselves. We try to practice what we preach, but sometimes we go off the deep end too, I know. But needless to say, it's been fun and a privilege to be able to help my patients and just kind of reframe that whole paradigm.
I know I tell my patients all the time, you had mentioned running from a tiger in previous conversations, like your body assumes that you're running from a bear right now. It has no idea what this stress is about, but it basically assumes you're running for your life. So, of course, sleeping is a bad idea because you'll get eaten by the bear. And eat whatever you can get your hands on, and your body's going to let it through. It's going to, open up all the doors. The leaky gut's fine. Just get it in so that you survive. And then you're supposed to, settle and get away from the bear, settle in the family, and your body will move its resources away from the adrenal glands and give you some hormones back and tighten up the gut and put your cortisol back in order, and all these things that never happen because we're just always running from another bear, sometimes 3 bears, right? So being able to put everything in its place, it's like, it was kind of a trick question, like, how do you fix sleep? It's like, well, you got to kind of fix everything. But I like the melatonin L-theanine combo. I think that's brilliant. What are some of your favorite cases? What are some of the ones that pop to the top of your mind that sort of, when you're having a bad day, you're like, yeah, but this is why we're here.
I was just talking with a practitioner the other day, and he's like, Daniel, man, healing these patients, it's an addiction. That's what I live for. And I was like, I never heard anyone say that, and I couldn't agree more. Like, I come to work hoping to get a difficult case. And usually that's the thing, is it's not difficult, right? I think we just complicate medicine. That's the problem. Like, looking at kind of through the lens of how I look at things, I just want to figure out what's driving that. That's why I don't like guessing. I like testing. I like to ascertain what's the underlying driver to figure out dysfunction. And so that's why going back to the genetics, going back to the blood chemistry, and then going back to the microbiome, that usually is the missing link. The microbiome often enough is once you begin to unfold that composition, and we've only begun to scratch that surface, we see very quickly that usually is the root of what's driving someone's headache or the brain fog or their energy, libido, skin issues. I mean, I had this patient who came to me he's seen a plethora of different doctors. In fact, he even saw my dermatology doctor who I grew up with. That was like my family derm doctor. It was crazy, small world.
That's awesome.
And never got full remediation, like severe skin issues. I mean, like you see these pictures, it's impressive the degree of kind of how thick he was, how stuck he was. And so we did a gut test. We figure out right away there was a lot going on there. We cleaned him up. He got better. Didn't get full resolution. And I said, usually when I see this representation, I think some exposure to kind of mold or environmental toxin. Did that test. Bingo. That was the bullseye. That was what took him over the cliff. We did a mold cleanup, and it's almost like everything cleared up instantly overnight, right? So sometimes that's the power of testing, is like when we get difficult cases, is just, I don't like guessing. I like testing, but often enough, there's patterns that I can see that, very quickly
Correct.
is struggling with. It's just sometimes with the testing, it allows us to be hyper targeted, especially in terms of the microbiome, because we recognize like Lactobacillus crispatus with a prostate, a cancer patient. What we now realize that the prostate gland is like, I term it as the O'Hare Airport of our organ tissue, because we know there's Porphyromonas gingivalis, there's Fusobacterium, which are both oral microbes found in the prostate. How does that happen? Which is also found in skin in the prostate. How's that happen? There's vaginal microbes or urinary microbes, Lactobacillus crispatus. We now see that when people are deficient in certain strains, lost keystone species, that's when we confer a lot of these kind of impaired immunological dysfunction, and then which further is exacerbated into autoimmune. So being able to reverse and suppress cancer, some very kind of tricky cases, but once you start looking under the hood, it's not a guessing game anymore. It's pretty definitive. And now we have tools as science and some of these tests begin to evolve to be able to treat on a higher level, because we're seeing kind of holes in the system. It's interesting. Another patient of mine, histamine is a big one, but looking at the microbiome, you need healthy microbial diversity to break down histamine. Same thing with synthesizing B vitamins and methylation. I had a patient, she was doing all the right things. She was eating all the right foods. We did a gene test. She was very high risk factor for histamine. And what she was doing was, well, one, her microbial diversity wasn't as great that it needed to be. So we did a kind of a gut cleanup and then restored some of the lower healthy commensal their strains. But within her genes, and I had that suspicion. I said, let's do a gene test. I suspect you are just have an issue with histamine. Okay. And so sure enough, she was doing a lot of meal prep. Another similar case just like that, same thing, is a lot of people that are eating right but doing meal prep, and histamine-driven intolerances are often done with foods that just sit out for a long time or leftovers. Constantly meal prepping, dueling of foods. Same thing within the bodybuilding community. Well, once upon a time, we worked a lot of kind of professional bodybuilders and bikini competitors, and all that is meal prep. But that's a problem, is because sometimes if you're not breaking that down, you're driving more inflammation. You're creating more of this LPS or lipopolysaccharide representation, which is an endotoxin, which then drives intestinal permeability. And now you have systemic inflammation. And now that impairs hormone function. Now you're not optimizing results and certainly compromising sleep. So it's all kind of connected in that big picture. We're not just one organ. This is the difference of practicing holistic health. And that's what people appreciate when they find myself and my team, is that we look at it's a systems biology approach. We're not just kind of, one area. We're not just pain in the neck or in the foot or in the back, right? There's
right.
Why the body is manifesting pain. And pain is actually an interesting component, because my philosophy is that within the rehab setting, you go to a lot of these clinics, not they're doing anything wrong necessarily, but you're not looking at internal chemistry, right? Your kidneys sit at the lower back. Well, if your blood is toxic because of so many toxicities that we're exposed to, and your genes are impaired, where your phase 2 is low, you're not clearing out, you're recirculating even more metabolically active, very kind of detrimental metabolites, and you're not clearing that out. Well, your kidneys the organ that filters kind of best in class has to work overtime. Now you get back pain, but you go to treat back pain, they're treating musculoskeletal. Not so fast. Let's look at the internal chemistry, right? So what we try to do is kind of pair everything to really get this full picture approach. So some of the hardest cases, we have so many patients that come in that have worked with 3, 4, 5. They come in with a plethora of testing too. I go, okay, let's pull up your GI test. Not one comes in with a GI test, right? Even some very elegant blood tests done, but something as simple like that, like, or a gene test, like there's certain missing components. And once we do that, it becomes game changing. We see right away kind of what's going on.
Man, that's so cool. We could do this for another hour for sure, man. What you're doing is so awesome and so needed. But I know you've got a hard stop and you kind of need to get. But what is one of the things you wish every patient knew before seeing you? And I guess, you've already said a lot of it, but what's the one thing that you're like, hey, give me a call, I can help you out. But first, what do you wish that they knew?
Everything we're doing is backwards. Yeah. No, because again, I get so many people say they've seen so many docs and they're still stuck. And it's really the simple things that have been overlooked. But it goes back to my foundational 5. They're like, are you eating right? Are you sleeping right? Are you moving right? Are you talking right? Are you pooping right? And sometimes, and often enough, they think they are, but it's really not. When we compare it with the results from the testing, is almost everything that all of us are doing are backwards. And sometimes me included, it's like my philosophy is we go from one box to another, negating the power of nature. But above all else, I think stress is really the culprit here, modern world. And so my mantra is attitude of gratitude. Like if someone approaches that philosophy, you're going to be in a better state of healing. Now it's not the end all be all necessarily, but that's kind of just a philosophy that I adhere to and I approach with all my patients, which obviously they appreciate. Everyone has their own story. We all think we're special, and we are, right? But really, you and I are like 99.98% identical, right?
Yeah.
It's genetics that really drives kind of our system failure, if you will. So it's the people that you keep, the information that you read. It's kind of everything that you're exposed to that is really molding who you are. Right. And so my premise is just to help re-educate patients, much like you shared when we spoke, is I'm a guide. What I know is still limitless. These new studies that are being pushed out daily, my goal is to keep myself and my team current. Science and medicine continue to evolve, leveraging cellular medicine through the use of peptides and some of these other testing that we can now integrate. We're able to intervene on a higher level, but really is I try to find beauty in everything. Every day above ground is a good day. I try to instill with my patients, instill hope, but really get to the basics of, again, let's help you eat right, sleep right, move right, talk right. You're going to feel right.
Dude, I love it. And I bet a bunch of other people do too. So tell us how they can find you. And I know you've got your own podcast. What's that? And how do we reach out to you?
Yeah, this is awesome. You're awesome. What you're doing is super high level too. So I appreciate you and your time and be able to speak to your community. So we just started a podcast. I'm fresh in the game, but we've been pushing out content for some time now. Big on education, big on educating our patients, practitioners alike. It's the TBD Fit podcast, tbdfit.com. That stands for Total Body Diagnostics. We use a holistic health approach to longevity. So it's the TBD Fit podcast is where you can find us. Otherwise, tbdfit.com. And our clinic is right outside of Chicago, Illinois. But we offer telemedicine, and we're glad to tell people however they need help.
Yeah, you can get to him from anywhere. That's, nationwide sort of virtual assistance is amazing. We'll have his contacts in the show notes. What you're doing is special, man. I appreciate you being on and sharing with our audience. And I suspect I'll be reaching out to you, begging for some nuggets of wisdom here in the near future. We'll have you back on when we have a little bit more time and we'll dig into some more stuff. It'll be great.
Clint, if you haven't done a gene test yet, I'd love to test yours and kind of walk you through that process.
If you would like to see what perfect genes look like, I will donate some DNA.
What's interesting is like one of the guys that started was just really brief, who, man, he's just like, again, not mastering the basics, but his genes, one of the best I've seen out of 1,000. Like just a genetic anomaly. I was like, I don't understand how you're still, with the lifestyle you live, super successful entrepreneur, several businesses, but just burning the candle.
Right.
He comes to our clinic. He trains with us every morning at 5 a.m. For the last, he was literally my third patient when I opened up almost 10 years ago now.
That's
And
awesome.
he's just incredible. But his genes, like,
Genetic lottery, bro.
that's what I say all the time. So, but the interesting component above all else is you can kind of see now, you can get a picture of where your kids are at. More fun because now you can intervene at a more earlier stage in the game to prevent kind of and really mitigate any sort of risk factors later on. So yeah, we can walk through that process anytime you're ready. But this was awesome.
Daniel, I'm going to reach out for sure. That sounds awesome. And I bet a bunch of other people will too. Thanks for being on. It's been a blast. We'll have you back on later and get in more depth. There's, that 5 pillars is 5 different podcasts, quite frankly, but we may not fit everybody through all of that, but I may be hitting you up. But thanks for being on, and you have a great day, man.
Love it. Well said. Thanks, Glenn. I appreciate you as well.
Thanks for joining me today on My MD Unscripted. I hope today's conversation opened your mind and inspired you to imagine a better path for your health and therefore life. If you found value in this episode, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone passionate about transforming healthcare. Real change starts with real conversations, so let's keep them going. Until next time, stay well, stay curious, and never stop pushing for better.